Welcome back to 3 Points, the show where we discuss the biggest storylines in the NBA. Joining me this week is 11-year NBA veteran and NBC Sports Boston broadcaster Brian Scalabrine, and from Sports Illustrated, a man with no NBA experience, as far as I know, my colleague Chris Herring. Fellas, let's jump right in. The Boston Celtics are an NBA best 16-4 after a win over the Wizards on Sunday, a team that made the finals last season behind the NBA's best defense is winning this season with a dominant offense. Scal, you are around this team every day. What are you seeing? And is this a better team than the one from last season?
Well, they're better offensively because they share it. They have better weapons. Derek White is twice the player he is this year than he was last year after the trade. Malcolm Brogdon is a great addition. Sam Hauser shooting the ball well. So they have like a legitimate starting group that moves the ball at a high level and two guys that can go get you buckets, and a bench group, which when they play that group with Tatum, you get to realize and understand and see his greatness and his ability to sort of take four other guys and be one of the best net rating teams in the NBA. They share it, they shoot it, they defend, they don't give up the three. They make 5 more threes than their opponent. That's 15 points right off the jump before the game is even over. It's very, very difficult to beat the Celtics.
I'm prepared to say that this team is certainly better than I think people were expecting in light of the injuries, all the questions that were kind of swirling over the team before the season with all the stuff with Ime Udoka and Joe Mazzulla. I still don't know if we can answer the question yet of whether they're better, all things considered. We're still waiting on other teams to be at full strength. We're still waiting on the Celtics to be at full strength. And I think a full strength, best version of this Celtics team is exactly what Scal was saying. Can they get back to the level they were at defensively? And obviously we can better answer that when Robert Williams is back. We can better answer that when we see a team like the Bucks closer to full strength and we get to see a Boston team play against them. So I'm not willing to say that they're better, but obviously with their offense playing this way and humming the way they are, the potential is there for them to be better. And then obviously too, I think, when we do get back to the playoffs, we'll get an opportunity to kind of see just how far along Joe Mazzulla is, because I think that that's so much of what people were willing to credit Ime Udoka with was how the Celtics looked in the playoffs and their ability to go toe to toe with a lot of those opponents.
Now, it's a good point about Mazzulla, who I think that's where we are going to find out exactly how good a coach he is. But he has looked great so far. And I do believe this Celtics team is better. I mean, the offensive numbers are just absurd. They are just bludgeoning teams behind a dominant offense. Look at some of the numbers. They have the best offensive rating in the NBA, the best net rating in the NBA, the highest effective field goal percentage in the NBA. Tatum, to me, easily top 5 MVP candidate right now. Jaylen Brown, we talk about him as an all-star. He's making a pretty strong case for all NBA, at least in the first quarter of this season. Marcus Smart is averaging 7 assists per game, having a phenomenal year at point guard. Al Horford, I need a deep dive on how Al Horford, going into Sunday's game, was shooting 48% from 3. How is Al Horford shooting 48% from 3? That was a wild statistic. Scal mentioned Sam Hauser, Malcolm Brogdon has been great. We'll see, especially when it comes to Hauser, how playable he is in the postseason. I think that's an open question. But right now, this Celtics team, I think, is better than the one we saw last season. All right, let's take a look at the top of the Western Conference standings. And you're going to find the Denver Nuggets up there, despite a schedule that has had the Nuggets on the road for 13 of their first 19 games. Denver is 12-7 and just a game behind Phoenix for the top spot. Nikola Jokic is playing like an MVP again. And lately, Jamal Murray has started to look like his old self. Chris, I'll start with you. As currently constructed, is this Nuggets team a true title contender?
Yes. I will say that with the slight caveat that I don't know that they're who I would pick right now to certainly to win the whole thing, maybe even to come out of the West. I don't know who anybody would pick coming out of the West right now. It's kind of all over the place. I'm concerned from the standpoint of, again, if we're talking about defense, it's a team that's trying a lot of different things out. It's a team that, I think Nikola Jokic has kind of absolved himself of some of the criticisms that were laid out about him defensively. That said, they're still one of the worst teams in the league at protecting the rim. They're a team that I do think maybe could use an upgrade. in terms of a rim protector because they bring Jokic up so high to the level of the screen a lot of the time. And really, it's a team that when they're scrambling defensively, when they're having to rotate multiple times, that I don't really trust them. Obviously, that's one of the sorts of things that will get you in a lot of trouble against a team like Golden State. So I do think there's room for improvement. That said, I do think they deserve a lot of credit, Michael Malone specifically, for kind of letting Jamal Murray play through a lot of what he was doing, really even lining him up to take a last shot in a game where he was not looking all that great, because I think he wants to rebuild his confidence and rebuild his belief. The fact that they've been able to do this with guys coming off major injuries, I do think speaks volumes about their offense, but I would like to see them get better defensively for me to feel a little bit better about saying that that's the team to beat in the West.
Yeah, Chris, I'll just add to that. So if Michael Porter Jr. lives up to his expectations, if Jamal Murray gets back to that level that we saw him in the bubble when he was like absolutely nasty with the ball in the fourth quarter, then that's 100% yes. They're probably the favorites. But, you know, that's putting a lot on the line. Like I've never watched Michael Porter Jr. over 10 games and been like, man, I absolutely love this guy. I've seen moments of it, but I don't think he really fits in. He takes some of the wildest shots when you have Nikola Jokic on your team. Just cut space. You're going to get wide open looks. So I would stamp them from a talent standpoint, but not necessarily as a cohesive standpoint. I'm with Chris. Like, I can't imagine what they would do against the Golden State Warriors. Wouldn't they just be in rotation all night long, scrambling around and giving up wide open threes? But if they live up to their potential, not just offensively, but defensively, then yes, they could come out of the West, and you never know what would happen in the NBA Finals.
So I want to address a couple of things that you guys said. Defensively, you're right. In the 7 losses that Denver has this season, their defensive rating is 126.2. That would be by far the worst in the NBA. In their wins, it's 107.2. So when they're playing defense, they can be pretty good at it. And Scal, you and I on Sunday had a little bit of a debate over Michael Porter Jr. I'm not too worried about him and how he fits. I'm more worried about his health, but how he fits with this starting group, I think is going to be fine. I think the starters in general are going to be fine. I think they're really good. My concern with Denver is what happens when they have to dig deep or go deep into the bench.
You better not be hating on Bones Highland. Don't say his name. Stop hating on Bones Highland.
I'm not.
That's my guy. You better not hate on Bones Highland.
Hey, my turn. I'm not hating on Bones Highland. I think Bones Highland and Bruce Brown, who's been a part-time starter, are the 2 reliable guys coming off the bench. But when you go past Highland and Brown, you get into Jeff Green, who's been pretty uneven so far this year, not exactly the reliable guy I thought he was going to be. You got Devon Reed, you got Christian Braun. They've been okay. You're still playing DeAndre Jordan significant minutes, which is a major red flag to me. I think that's a team that if they want to consider themselves true championship contenders, they've got to get somebody else. Now, maybe that's coming via buyout market when we get into late February, early March. Maybe that comes in a trade where they move around some pieces, but I think they need one more depth piece to really rank among the top teams, even in a significantly weaker Western Conference. All right, the Sacramento Kings have not made the postseason since 2006, but there are signs that drought could end this season. The Kings are 10-8 with a top 3 offense and with an enviable amount of shooters that Mike Brown can put on the floor. Scal, let me ask you, are you buying or selling the Kings as a playoff team this year?
So going and being in the play-in is a playoff team or not? How do you look at it? Or no,
you got to be top eight.
Yeah, you know when they hit that beam of light after they get a win and it goes to the sky, to space, they're calling on Captain Marvel to come in and help this team out. And maybe Captain Marvel could play some defense, because I'm buying their offense at home, but I'm not buying anything else from the Sacramento Kings, even though I like them and I'm rooting for them and I love Mike Brown. And had they got screwed early on by the Klay Thompson foul and the Tyler Hero travel, they would have 2 more wins. But I'm not buying them as they don't play defense at a high enough level, and that road team, that high octane offense doesn't travel. So unless they get a little bit of help from that beam of light, I'm not buying it.
I'm going to oppose Scal here. I'm going to buy it here for this one reason. They're a team that I think on a lesser scale has a little bit of what Boston has going on. They're number 2 in the league in offensive rating. They're lower down and much lower down defensively, but they're in the bottom third of the league, the bottom 5 of the league defensively. What I will say about Mike Brown, and where I think he's kind of shifted some things, that personnel wise, they're not the greatest defensive unit. I think you're always going to have problems when you've got Sabonis trying to defend the paint for you. Where I do see a little bit of a difference is that this is a team that for years has played track meets up and down. Obviously with the fast-paced offense they've got more shooting. Where I think that Mike Brown has made a little bit of a difference is that it seems like he has told them, look, maybe we are not the greatest defensive team, but I expect more out of you from that end. That means, De'Aaron, you're going to guard the ball. Same way that Steve Kerr said to Steph Curry when he first got there. But I think the biggest thing has been that in transition, that even though they play up and down, that they really make a pretty concerted effort to make stops, and that they're really at the top of the league in terms of how few points per game they allow in fast break opportunities in transition. Which in these close games, a team that has played almost as many as clutch games as any team in the league, that those 2 or 3 points make a difference per game, particularly when you consider that Kevin Huerter's not going to shoot 50% from 3 all year. So even as their offense slows down, I think they've got the potential to make the playoffs. I expect them to make the playoffs, especially as we talk about how kind of convoluted this Western Conference is. And as we look at teams like the Lakers that still have some room to go, I think to prove that they're going to be there at the end of the season.
That was an interesting comp, Chris, with the Celtics, who have remarkable upside defensively with Robert Williams coming back, and the Kings, who have no upside defensively at this point with that entire
What
group.
I mean is where they rank. I totally hear you. Totally hear you. Understood.
I know what you mean. I am buying the Kings as a top 8 team in the Western Conference. I'm going to tell you why. Number one, I don't think it's going to take 48 wins to get the 6th seed this year like it did last year. The Western Conference, to me, feels a lot weaker in totality than it has in years past. So you're not going to need to get all the way up into that 45-ish win range necessarily to get into the playoffs. A 500 record might get you in that 6-7 range where the Kings are sitting right now. I do love their shooting. As you guys pointed out, Kevin Huerter, even if he's not shooting 50%, is going to be a high-level shooter. Keegan Murray, I think, is only going to get better with that team. And I look at De'Aaron Fox, and while he hasn't played well the last couple of years, I think he's stepped into a better role this year. I mean, you look at not just his numbers, but the clutch numbers this year. He's top 5 in the NBA when it comes to clutch points per game. He's number 1 in the NBA when it comes to clutch scoring. And if you've got a guy that you can trust with the ball in his hands in end-of-game situations, that's going to help you a lot. And I do think Mike Brown, even though they'll never be even a middle-of-the-pack defensive team, the fact that as we record this, they're right at like 27th, that's an improvement from where they were last year. I think they're going to be able to sit in that 24 to 27 range, and that, my friends, is going to be enough to get the Kings into the playoffs. The drought ends this year in Sacramento.
You guys just know Portland, Utah, Golden State, Minnesota, Dallas, they all sit behind them. I expect those teams to be better at the end of the year. So I'm just saying it ain't going to be easy.
You are wrong.